All right, Rand, we were talking during the break about all these Clemson dudes are going to get drafted in addition to Kate Klubnik. But let's look here. These are the quarterbacks you talked about in the last podcast, 10 through 6. Yam Aliava was 6. Sawyer Robertson out of Baylor was 7. Lenora Sellers, who is 20 years old in a couple days, out of South Carolina, number 8. Malik Murphy was a fun watch because he surprised me in terms of how good he was and consistent as a quarterback at number 9. And then finally, John Mateer, who's transferring from Washington State along with his OC over to Oklahoma. We'll get a chance to see what he looks like against better competition at number 10. So Cade is number 5. And then number 4, producer Sharon, I'll just tell you this. I got a call a couple weeks ago from Brand. He said, Fernando Mendoza, that kid can play. And he's a South Florida guy. Retzer Jr. went to Cal. He actually initially committed to Yale, so he ain't a dummy either. Went to Cal, not a bad school, then made his way to Indiana for this 2025 season. 21 years old, 6'5", 225. For me, he's a fringe first-rounder, top of the second-round guy. And I like to think about it this way, Rand, when I think about quarterbacks in particular as a Steelers fan. Would I want the Steelers to draft him between picks 15 and 32? Yes. Like, I might have some reservations about Cade Klubnik for some of the reasons we talked about. Fernando Mendoza, I love everything about this game. And one of the things you mentioned to me was he did it behind an offensive line that showed up about 25% of the time it felt like a cow.
Yeah, man, this guy was impressive. I actually was having a conversation yesterday. I was with Alonzo Highsmith and his son, AJ Highsmith, who are both University of Miami alum. And actually, Alonzo actually went to Christopher Columbus High School, which is the same high school that Fernando Mendoza went to. And I was like, how could you guys not get this guy? And at least in the transfer portal to try to bring him home. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. But like you talked about, man, the one thing that stood out about this guy was his touch and his ball placement. Like, it was something, it's really impressive to watch. And like you said, he played behind a poor offensive line at Cal. He had 3 games last year where he was sacked at least 6 times in each of those games. And so he had to be tough. And he, like I mentioned about Cade Klubnik fading away, in the face of pressure, like this guy stood there and did it time and time again, behind that bad offensive line, probably almost to a fault. He's going to have to learn how to protect himself better. But he has a live arm. He can throw the ball from the far hash and squeeze the ball into tight places and has some really big-time throws on third down. And like I mentioned, his ball placement, that is what is going to have these evaluators, these GM and these head coaches excited, is watching how he can place the ball and those back shoulder throws, putting enough arc on the ball. His deep ball is impressive to watch because he puts it out in front and over the outside shoulder of the receiver. So if his receiver doesn't catch it, then the ball's going out of bounds. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. I'm just really, really excited to see this guy play in this Indiana offense and see where his progression goes. Like you said, I think the guy will end up going in the first round if he continues to play like he played at Cal.
Yeah, Fernando's someone who flew under the radar last year because he played at Cal. But, I mean, you go back and watch him play, and to your point, why are we not talking more about him? If you're a college team that needs a quarterback, well, Indiana needed one, so they went out and got him. But in terms of the things that I thought he did well, you touched on a lot of them, but plays with pressure in his face. He has a good sense of the pocket pressure, and he can subtle movements. He's not looking to run. He's not a runner. He can win sometimes with his feet if he needs to. The ball comes out on time. The ball goes usually to the right location. Touch and accuracy, you talked about that as well. So there's a lot of things that translate now. Sometimes when you talk about these quarterbacks, you have to squint to see the good stuff. I don't want to crush the kid, but Connor Wegman comes to mind. He had only played a handful of games going into last season. I'm sure he felt some of that pressure, but there was a lot of hype about him 12 months ago, and he just sort of faltered. He was injured for part of the season last year, got benched, and now he's since transferred out of Texas A&M. But with Fernando, you don't have any of that because you've seen him do it. You've seen him do it against good competition with little help around him in terms of the offensive line and even the playmakers. They had a handful of guys get drafted from that Cal team last year, Noel Williams in particular, the cornerback. But offensively, he wasn't working with the same weapons, as example, the Cam Wood was at the U. And they gave it to the U pretty good there until the fourth quarter happened. But when you're 6'5" and you're 230-ish and you look the part, and you just talked about 6'5" is kind of high, you can certainly work with that. My comp for him was, and we talked about this yesterday, with Joe Milton and Malik Murphy. And I said that Malik Murphy was what Joe Milton was supposed to be. My comp for Fernando is what I thought Tyler Shuck was supposed to be based on the physical tools that he had, because that's a situation where you had to sort of squint and see it because he didn't start till last year at Louisville. What do you think about the Tyler Shuck comp in terms of size and arm strength? Probably similar. Anything else get you going there? You like another player as a comparison?
No, because we've talked about this before, and I definitely can see where you feel that way, and I wouldn't push back against it at all. I understand when in terms of because the context in which you're comparing him to Tyler Shuck, like to me it fits, and I want to just go back and say, you know, when we're talking about these guys transferring, right? Like, why are you transferring? Like, are you transferring because you want to go up in competition, like say a Cam Ward did, like a John Mateer has done? You want to go up in competition? Like he's transferring from Cal probably because he's tired of getting hit first and foremost. But he's also, likely transferring because he wants to step up. Because if you look at Cignetti's offense comparative to the Cal offense, a lot of the Cal offense was a half-field read system, where at times, if you're watching him and you're studying him, he's looked like he's locking on the receivers, but they're only giving him half-field reads. In Cignetti's system, he's going to be able to see more of the full field, which I think is probably the next progression in his growth as a quarterback. Like this guy, like he has all of the makings to be one of those really good ones. And another Christopher Columbus High School alum that played quarterback in the National Football League was Brian Griese. And so, can't wait to reach out to my man Grease and see what his thoughts are, because Grease was a part of our coaching staff in San Francisco that was really high on Brock Purdy coming out.
Yeah, so Cignetti, the quarterback's name escapes me, but he had transferred from the University of Miami, played last season on a torn ACL for part of it, and ended up getting drafted as well. And I think Fernando is going to be a better player from top to bottom than what we saw last year in that offense. And that team was a lot of fun to watch last year. So that's going to be one thing. The other thing that you sort of talk about, and you mentioned players like John Mateer transferring and Fernando Mendoza as to why. I remember talking to Josh Simmons, the left tackle out of Ohio State, who transferred from San Diego State back at the Combine. And I said, what made you decide to leave San Diego State to go what would end up being the best program in the country last year? He said, I did everything I could do at San Diego State, and I wanted to play with better players and against better players. And he said, no disrespect to the guys that I was whooping up on at San Diego State, but I wanted to see what that looked like in the Big Ten and against the best players in the country. And he was incredibly dominant until he got hurt in October, and parlayed that into being the first-round pick, the Kansas City Chiefs at the bottom of round one there. So I think if Fernando Mendoza goes to Indiana and just plays like he did last season, I still think he's a top 32 guy. You agree with that?
Absolutely. I believe that. And like you said, I feel like I like what you were talking about in terms of, comparing him to the Steelers and their average of where they picked. And I think he will probably go in that 15 to 20 range right now. However, he's going to have a full season to, allow himself to grow and be pushed up. And it's what we do in the National Football League, man. We run the quarterbacks up the board. So all these guys end up getting drafted a little bit higher than probably their skill set says.